Welcome to the Life Puzzle podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind leadership, growth, and the human side of business. I'm Shondell Labizetta. My guest, Sasha Seberry, Director at Croma Coatings, a national company that has been part of her family for more than 25 years. Sasha has built her career in an industry that's traditionally male-dominated, starting out in marketing and sales before moving into senior leadership, where she now oversees operations across Australia. Sasha, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. What do you think it really takes to build influence and not just authority in a place where you feel you don't belong at first?
The best position to start is to ask questions of where they've come from, what led them to be where they are, what they think the status quo is, or perhaps their perspective on whatever you're talking about. Build some trust. People like talking about themselves. If you show that you value their expertise, their experience, I think you change how they relate to you. So I think you can learn from them. I really feel that is the key to learning to influence, because once you build some trust with people, then you can share ideas, you can get their feedback on your ideas, and that's how you move forward.
Getting interested in other people, that's the best way to
100%.
Create relationships.
Yes.
I so agree. I think a lot of the time people are so worried about being interesting that they often forget that the most important way to build a relationship is by becoming interested in the other person.
Yep.
Amazing.
It works every time.
It does.
And I say that not from a selfish or an insincere way. I think it's the key to get people to open up, to trust you, to relate.
Well, how can you relate to someone if you don't know anything about them? It's so true. You know? So, and I've seen it happen, whether it's in a sales context, whether it's in a relationship context. We've worked with people across all different areas of life. And so one of the things that's consistent all the time is communication, building trust, and you can't do that if you don't know anything about the person or you're making assumptions. You've held roles in all different areas of the business, sales, marketing, leadership, stakeholder relationships with companies overseas. There's so many different aspects to your role, managing people and also creating harmony, and now managing up and managing down. What does great leadership look like to you now?
Great leadership is someone that walks the talk, someone that is striving to be better themselves, because I think then they're open to feedback. We talked about that before. Creates a safe environment where people can share their ideas and feel that they'll be listened to and considered. I think that makes you stronger. Personally, the type of leader I would like to work for. Someone that inspires me because they're seeking to be better, so that then makes it possible for me.
So if anyone watching is transitioning into a leadership role like now,
yes,
what would be the advice that you would give to them to help them to make that transition smooth, knowing that you've probably paid some hard tax along the way in terms of mistakes and lessons? What would be your piece of advice for someone going and transitioning into that journey now?
I think that the number one thing to do is work on yourself. If you can't manage your emotions, you're going to have a lot of trouble. So you need to, if you do nothing else, work on yourself. Improve, evolve,
Yes.
level up.
Yes. When you say you can't manage your emotions, then you're in trouble. I think it's really interesting, because one of the things you've heard me say many times over is that all leadership is self-leadership. And so I think that's really wise advice around working on self. When you talk about emotional regulation and management, I think sometimes in the context of business, people get afraid of the idea of emotions, and there's no place for emotions in business. But you and I know that they don't separate that well. So what kinds of things would you encourage people to work on emotionally in terms of that regulation?
People think that you shouldn't be emotional in business, and I think men particularly have to maintain no emotion, because otherwise they're seen as weak. But I think that what they don't realise is that emotion comes out in them in other ways. So it may not be traditional sense of the word emotion. They're not sitting there crying or
that's right.
what have you, but it comes out as overwhelm and rash decisions or dismissive behaviour or resistance to change and things like that. I think if you can't manage your emotions, then you create other issues that then obviously impact the organisation and other team members. So yeah, I think you need to be able to find ways to cope with the pressure, because there invariably is. And you can talk all you like about work-life balance and it shouldn't be like this and it shouldn't be like that. But at the end of the day, if you're in leadership, you're responsible. The buck stops with you. Like I talk about Croma as having a heartbeat, and as much as we have really great people that do a fantastic job, I don't take my eyes off it. You know, from a different level, of course. There's obviously stuff that I have nothing to do with every day, but it's on a higher level that it is a responsibility that it does not go away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be able to cope with the pressure. You have to be able to cope with the pressures of the personal issues that your team may be dealing with, things that are happening in their lives, and how that then impacts the organisation and all of those things. So yeah, it's managing your emotions is critical.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey. You've been here with Croma Coatings for over 2 decades. It's quite a story within your life, but your connection to the business started way before that. So tell us a little bit about your first memory of the family business, and when did you actually know that you wanted to step into making this part of your career?
Yeah, it was certainly a long time ago. As long as I can remember, even like in my school years, I would spend every school holidays working for my father. I guess you would call it a passion. In an early age, I was inspired. I wanted to learn. I liked to earn money.
Don't we all?
Yeah, absolutely. So while my friends were all off at the beach and shopping or doing different things, I was there earning $30 a day, I think it was.
It felt like a lot back then,
It
didn't
did.
it? Yes.
But it did fund my life. And so yeah, I enjoyed that. But I guess one of the main moments was when I was 15. I was in year 10 in high school, and my father took me with him to Sweden, the paint company that we were selling their products, and even we still do now.
Yes.
So I was able to meet back then the president of the Becker Group. I probably had aspirations to work for him. Things changed and we ended up opening a business in Sydney in the year 2000, and here we are.
Amazing. And so what an experience said you were 16 or 15?
15, yeah.
Yeah, so 15 and you're going off to Sweden. What did you think about it then versus how you reflect on that now?
I absolutely loved the corporate environment. I was just blown away by the professionalism, the dedication to R&D. You know, even back then they used to published that they spent 7% of their turnover on R&D. So when I went on that first trip, we spent time in the lab, we spent time in the factory, in different departments. I just loved the education and the drive and the direction that company had, and I just wanted to be a part of it. That led me to finish high school and go to uni and do a business degree. I would later then go and do an internship there with that same company for 4 months over the Swedish winter, and even used them as case studies in my degree, and I just loved it. They were amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. And what an exceptional experience. I think, you know, one of the things that we often will talk about when we're talking about leadership and working environments, there's obviously been heaps of conversations around what culture looks like and how to motivate people. Yep. When you think back to that, how much of that experience, both the visit as well as the internship that you did, actually was the driving passion for what you've created over the last couple of decades?
Oh, absolutely. It was the beginning. The man that I mentioned that was the president of the Swedish group, he was Harvard educated. He had a drive like no one I've ever met before. And I think he would have had very high expectations. I think, as can be the case when you work for a company with that sort of person, then I'm sure he had people that weren't his biggest fans, but for me, he took me under his wing, certainly provided a pathway to me and a level of inspiration that, just made me want to be better and set me on that journey.
If you knew back then what you know today, what would you go back and tell your younger self to do that perhaps might have made the transitions better, smoother, easier? What do you wish you'd known then?
The main thing I think would just be to trust yourself. I think probably wasted a lot of years not doing that. If you trusted yourself more, the productivity that you could have achieved would have been a lot more.
Wow, that's powerful. What do you think the reason is that people don't? Because it's a common answer that people find that inner truth for themselves. And so what do you think stops people from being able to really back themselves, to trust themselves?
I think fear does. I think the fear of the unknown. So if you don't know what you don't know, but actually that sounds a funny answer to say, because obviously if you don't know what you don't know, you shouldn't be frightened of it or fearful of it.
I think that trusting yourself is such a great answer, Sasha. It's something that it's not super common, but I think a lot of people who have wisdom and who have walked the walk and learned the lessons often realise that they could have got there faster had they just backed themselves and trusted themselves. What do you think are the lessons for people who are struggling with that right now to be able to overcome that faster?
I think fear is something that is at the heart of
not trusting
the problem there, exactly. So most people fear getting it wrong,
other people's opinions,
making a fool of themselves or whatever it may be. So I think you spend a lot of time in your head in that space, and obviously it's not very productive. So trusting yourself and doing it anyway, I think, is a good philosophy. It's not easy to do. I've read about people that say you should fail fast, that you shouldn't waste time not doing things. It's better to do it anyway. That's where the success comes from, the failure. So that's been really hard for me. I think I'm not alone there. I think it's a hard thing for most people. It would definitely have been a different story had I trusted myself earlier on.
Absolutely. And I think it is, you're not alone in that, and it can be quite difficult for people to actualise things like failing fast and taking action without knowing for certain that they're going to get a particular result. And the one thing that I say to my clients often is, there a way that you can make that a little bit smaller so that you can do it in pieces? We build confidence from doing things, completing and repeating, build that confidence. But if we never complete, then we never build the confidence, which means we never build the inner trust. Small agreements made and kept over time, it becomes like a circular reference. So it's great that you've been able to step into that and create more confidence around, one, trusting yourself, two, looking at ways that you can fail fast or have a go and see what needs to be tested and corrected. You've got a pretty big team now across the country. What are your top 2 tips for leading teams through change and uncertainty?
I think you have to read the room to know where you're at. If you see disinterest, or like when you're talking about something new and they go quiet, or I think that's just uncertainty playing out in their mind and 1,000,001 questions. How's this going to work? What does it mean? And maybe they don't, at this point, believe in what you're suggesting. So I think reading the room, and then, if necessary, taking them aside and going through it and understanding where they're coming from. And usually I find that they might even try and deny that there's anything going on, but a few more digging questions and you might get there, and then you can answer it directly. People are resistant to change, and for my personality type, it's hard to deal with, but you get better at dealing with it and trying to understand where other people are coming from, because you need them.
Feedback and repetition.
100%.
I love that. What's a story that you can think about that actually makes you smile, that perhaps maybe wouldn't have happened if you were an emerging leader and entering the workplace today?
The funniest story that I have that probably wouldn't happen in most circumstances, especially nowadays, we entered the Sydney market here and we did it in such a conservative fashion.
Yes.
We had no spare money. We didn't go into debt for it. We financed it ourselves, but we had 6 pallet spaces of product. We had 1 little tiny office space. We had hire cars and then second-hand cars that were sent over from WA. And basically my role in the very beginning was, I had a sales marketing background. I had worked in the office for my father's company, and then I hit the road in Sydney, following up a heap of contacts that we had from the Awiza exhibition that we had just exhibited in. So I had no experience selling anything, let alone paint. I wasn't an applicator, like someone that knew how to...
So no technical knowledge?
I had no technical knowledge. Yeah. I had no physical stock holding in Sydney at the very beginning, eventually 6 pallet spaces.
Yes.
And I think I had a hire car, and I think I originally had a business card that had a Perth address on it. So I think back now and think that it was...
A miracle?
It's crazy, yeah, like... If you knew how green you were or how unlikely or how outlandish it was to think that you could create a business, you wouldn't do it. So I think that in that instance, the greenness actually worked to my advantage.
To help
but
you. Yes.
I can't imagine there being many people that would probably do that.
And actually, that's something that I want to ask. Do you think that people are more discerning and they do know the risks and the possibilities that could not work? And do you think perhaps people try less because they are aware of those things?
I think fear runs the show for many people, and even perhaps a lot of people, they just hide it differently. Maybe naivety, but the same level of naivety, there's passion for the product range that I sold and that company. And I have to say, it never let me down. So I guess almost it married together, and the impossible, we created it.
Do you think you would have done differently had you had looked at you described it as naivety.
Yeah.
But do you think you would have approached it differently had you been more conscious of what the real risks were, what the challenges were, how under-equipped things were for you?
Yes, I think if you realised it, you probably wouldn't do it. Since we've subsequently set up in Melbourne and Brisbane, we had more backing behind us and could do it differently. It's still not easy, but yeah, the original Sydney setup, oh my God, we laugh about it every so often. Probably the naivety helped in that instance.
Yeah.
So
one of the interesting things about nepotism and people's perception of nepotism is that when they think of joining a family business, some people have this perception that it's like a golden ticket. Everything's set, everything's easy. But building your own authority in an environment like that can be challenging when people come with preconceived ideas. I suppose when you think about that in the context of your journey over the last 20 years, what is a story that either makes you smile or makes you cringe?
I don't know if I have specific stories, but I'm not probably the biggest fan of the family business terminology.
Yes.
I think that it does come with that, and I guess that's the connotation maybe that I have as well, is that you think about the family business that has the uncle and the auntie and the kids and the mum and the dad and the grandparents. Everyone just rocks up and gets a job, and other non-family member staff, they're the ones that carry the weight or do the work, if you like. So while the other family members can get away with bad behaviours. So I guess I've never really thought of us as a family business. It's my father. I have huge respect for him. He's incredible at what he does, and his vision and the energy that he has always had, and even now at 72. He's extraordinary, and I don't know anyone else like him in that respect. But I would say besides that, he's given me some awesome opportunities of being able to come into Croma, and there was obviously some finance from his Perth company to get our Sydney company started, and he allowed me to come along in the early days with that. So we both have put in huge efforts, and I've learned a lot from him, and he's also, as time's progressed, given me more and more reign and authority. Yes, for sure, it's made it harder because people naturally have that connotation or that thought process that, you know, it's easy for her, she's the boss's daughter, what does she know? Or when you're trying to make a change, do they work for Ron? Are they going to listen to her? So yeah, it has been hard. For the most part, it's really good these days. There has been moments over the years, and I'm sure they made me cut my teeth probably a lot harder than if I was a man as well.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the experience of being in a male-dominated industry where a lot of people are on tools and perhaps maybe you weren't qualified in that area, which you mentioned before.
Yep.
What do you think some of the lessons that you had to push harder against because you weren't that gender and also not experienced with the tools that you were selling?
So I guess there's a couple of perspectives I can give here. Like in the very beginning, my job was to be in the field with the customers. So in the very beginning, we had half a dozen clients that came along through a previous agent we had. But other than that, Sydney was new. We had no representation, we had no brand recognition. So we were on the ground cold calling. And so that was walking into a factory in an industrial area. There were all different nationalities. And this was requiring me to strike up a conversation about what their current wood coating requirements, what their needs were, what their requirements are, and to try and get an audience about the products that I could offer. I think there's a bit of a perception that women might get that opportunity easier in the very beginning, and who am I to argue?
Maybe you took that opportunity.
Maybe I took it, yeah.
Female voice on the phone. I wonder what she looks like.
It was never really phone calls because that never really worked. It was going directly into them and trying to speak, door knocking, trying to get to speak to the right person. And you may not always get that straight away, but I really felt that you had one shot. You had one opportunity to speak, and if you remotely caught talking something you didn't know about, or I don't know if I can swear.
You can.
Okay. Bullshitting. If you spoke something that you weren't sure of and wasn't correct, then you would have been annihilated. So I was very cautious. I did never give any sort of advice or comments if I wasn't sure about it or I hadn't got the answer. So I would just reply many times, I'll find out for you and get back to you. And I did. And sometimes that was simply walking out the front to the car, picking up one of the team, asking the question, going back in. And that worked for me. I built credibility with the customers, and even though I didn't have any technical application experience, they respected me and trusted me. And even like we talked about a little bit before, I would ask and learn from them. If there was things I didn't know that they could help me with, they did. And that worked really good. And so, I feel that in that area in a male-dominated industry, it worked out fine for me. And then if I look at other areas where it's predominantly male, you could talk about our own management team or our own group, or let's say our paint supplier, the teams of people over there. And if I talk about them, I think that there might have been initially days where they expected me to know very little, unless they're new, and then we get talking and they're usually surprised by my technical knowledge I have these days. I always approach them from wanting to learn from them. I don't want to go and talk about me or what I'm doing. I want to learn from them. So, and that works really well too.
Yeah. I think that's a mark of a good leader. The journey of learning never really stops. So certainly over the years, you've had to go from overcoming all of these obstacles around perception, around the industry, how you were showing up in the industry, learning product, learning process. What do you think's been your biggest lesson, or what's something that you look back and go, wow, I can't believe that I actually did that?
I think I used to worry a lot about what would happen. I guess operating more from a fear base rather than a grounded opportunity. I certainly feel like I'm very different in that way now. And some of that comes from experience. Some of it comes from the learnings that I do. But that would be my biggest change. I'm very proud of the team of people that are behind the organisations, of the paint brands we work with, because they create very good products, and we're lucky to have them. So
I love that. In today's society, people are less likely to be having verbal conversations. And what we found through our training is that there's a lot of people that are actually really struggling to actually receive feedback out of fear that they may not like it or that they'll take it personally. What would your advice be to people who are afraid of feedback, or perhaps don't get curious to ask for feedback, especially considering the story that you just shared?
Anything that can help you get better, it's to know where you're starting from. So if there's an issue with our products or our team or our company, I want to know about it, because if I don't, then I can't do anything about it. Or if there's something that I've done wrong or I can improve at, I want my team to come to me any time of the day. So as far as others go, I would encourage them to find a way to deal with it because it can't be all that bad. But I think that keeps you stuck. If you can't accept feedback, if you can't take a look in the mirror or look inside or have any concept that you can improve yourself, then you are stuck.
It's not always easy to do that though.
No, it's not. I think it's worth it. It's rewarding.
What do you think is the best advice or example of feedback that you have taken from the generation before you, or is there anything in particular that you've chosen to do deliberately differently that you think has had a huge impact?
I think the generation before was a generation that lived within their means better. I think they had a less wastage mentality, which some of it is because things were built to last longer rather than the more throwaway society we now live in. But I think that the respect for money is something that I have carried forward and value a lot. I don't like wastage of money personally or in a business sense. I think that's really important, and I think it keeps things working well to keep that focus. And then the main thing that I do differently, I think now, is I tackle problems head on a bit faster than perhaps the older generations did. If there's a problem in the organisation or particularly staffing area, then I don't want to be left with it long term, so I try to deal with it earlier. So
Sasha, I think it's really interesting to be a female in business now. Whether you're someone who runs their own business or whether you're someone who is in a senior leadership role or a leadership role in business, I think it's really interesting. We've got a lot of women listening now who are perhaps walking into boardrooms or workshops or appointments where they have to showcase their value, and they might still be feeling quite outnumbered in this way. What would you say to them before they walk in through that door? How should they prepare themselves?
if you're feeling unsure, or especially in the early days, the best thing you can do is listen and ask questions. And that will paint you as the type of person that wants to know, wants to learn, is open-minded. You start piecing those pieces together, you tie it back to the outcomes that they want. And then I think that is how you start to build your credibility, because if you know where the organisation is going or where it wants to go, that's perhaps being communicated by senior people to you, and you ask the questions and you get the feedback from different areas, and then you can start questioning, is this going to get us to where we want to go? How can we do it differently? And probably once you're in that position, you can put forward some perspectives. But I think if you're feeling anxious or unsure, ask questions, listen. Can't go wrong.
It was interesting, I was reading a study recently where they had done a study and said that people that smile more often are actually perceived as being luckier. And as I got a little bit deeper into it...
That's an interesting...
It is an interesting story, and as I got a bit deeper into it, I realised that the study had actually proven not necessarily that the smile was the correlation to being lucky, it was actually that people who smile more frequently are perceived as being more approachable, more friendly and more coachable. And so the people who were smiling more frequently were actually being given more opportunities.
Wow, there you go.
And that was mostly because they were perceived as being someone who really wanted an opportunity. And so I love what you said there around questions, because I think so often people make the mistake of thinking that if you're asking questions, you don't know what you're doing, or that you're not confident if you're asking questions. And so is there any other advice that you would give around the approach to the way we ask questions, like just from your experience and what you've learned?
Oh, there has to be probably a point where you do it anyway, even though you're scared or anxious, because you won't know until you try.
Yeah. Were those moments like that for you, where you feel the fear and do it anyway, you did it and you're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't so bad? Or like what's been your experience?
Yeah, I have definitely had moments of things are never as bad as you make them out to be or worry about them. So yes, I'm struggling to recall specific things in this context, but I do know for sure, definitely, it's never as bad as you worry it's going to be. If you have the insight from different people, then you can also see the holes as well, because you can be technically orientated, or you can be an expert, or you can be good at what you do, but you have blind spots that you can't see. And so I think that's one thing. I want to know what my blind spots are, because I think that's how you can improve. So I think that, by asking questions from all different people, and perhaps it's what's the strategy, or how are we going to affect this, or what can we do to address a problem, or whatever it may be, that is where the answers come out. You might not be able to clearly see it at the time, but you can start to join them together.
Have you ever had moments where you received feedback that was really hard to take on board, but ended up being like the best feedback? I'm sure that there are people listening that they think, oh, it's all well and good, but what if I hear something that I don't like the answer to? What do I do then? So what would you tell someone in that position?
You have to think about it, process it. For me, probably the feedback that hurts the most is if you feel like you've let someone down that you care about. And I'm talking about a staff or a team member that may have perceived something you did or a decision you made negatively. Your first human reaction is to think, that's not what I meant, or how is that the case? You slow down enough to think, okay, from their perspective, and reassess and look where maybe they're right. And maybe that was a blind spot. Maybe we need to do things differently. So, over the years I have had a couple of those. If you can sit with it, even if it's uncomfortable, you'll be better for it.
I've often found that sometimes the moments of greatness, the biggest growth experiences actually came from the things that were most uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. And no one wants to disappoint someone. Naturally, for me, over the years, I don't want to disappoint my father. If I've been given the capacity to do things and then I don't want to do something to the detriment or be not successful, but I guess the odds are that's going to happen. I think that, if anything, most of us need to be more brave.
Not less brave. And that brings me to this question. I think the higher you climb in your career, the more you accelerate and the more you take on, the lonelier it can feel and the lonelier it gets. So how have you built support around yourself as a female leader, as a leader in general?
I guess looking up to other people I admire, be it personal connections, business. I'm lucky to have a few people in my corner that are what I would consider mentors, people that I respect, people that I look at and I would like to be like and make decisions like they do. And maybe they're even just people I admire in general about how they conduct themselves. So I look to those types. And then the digital landscape. We're so lucky to be able to have the podcasts that we can listen to and the exposure to all these amazing people that we're just spoilt for choice and learn huge amounts from that. I can't imagine not having access to that.
We are in information abundance, and if anything, there are some people that potentially claim that as being something that is not a good thing because there's so many things to choose from, and you and I both know how important relationships are in this economy. And I think that it's losing its luster for a lot of people. They don't understand and appreciate how important the relationships are. But what I think I'm picking up on from you is that not only did it really help you guys greatly to actually get the feedback and to have the conversations and to get the help and the support, but it's also like they're getting a lot of benefit out of that because they're getting first-hand information from their customers, which can then help them with what they're doing, right? Yeah.
They genuinely like knowing how what they're working on is in reality and how it's working or how they can fix something. And the market in Australia is different to other areas of the world. And sometimes there might be, they don't understand, but then you explain it to them or you show them. There can be some language barriers too, but for the most part, they're brilliant. I'm not sure if you're aware, Sherwin-Williams is the largest paint company in the world. They're massive. They're led by a woman.
Oh, how amazing.
So I believe there's only been 10 previous CEOs or presidents of this company, and she's number 11.
Wow, and amazing.
I think they are lucky to have her. I think she's doing a superb job. And then
you had the opportunity to meet her?
No, but I have met, there's a woman who heads up the commercial division that we're part of. She's based in the UK and she's amazing. I have had the privilege of meeting her, and they're a massive, massive company. And that comes with challenges and some issues that we deal with, but there are some superb people there too.
Yeah. I think the people that we work with make such a difference. I'm a big advocate for technology. I think that some of the things that we're facing now with the productivity and all of that is amazing. And I do think that we're still humans who might be in a technologically driven world, but relationships are everything. And certainly in my career, that's been a thing that has always been a cornerstone, if you like, around creating that success.
There's lots of great people, and I've been very lucky to meet them and learn from them with the suppliers we work with.
Fantastic. And I think such a great example to be able to be aligned with an organisation that champions excellence in many different ways. Sasha, thank you so much for coming in today and for sharing your wisdom and just chapters of your journey along the way. And I know that there's certainly been some fabulous moments that we've had together over the course of our relationship, and looking forward to celebrating you and cheering you on from the sidelines as we continue that. But I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and look forward to seeing you continue and your team going from strength to strength.
Thank you for having me and all your support and teachings, and you're an incredible woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Takes one to know one, love. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.